Once upon a time, in a tiny village wrapped in golden hills and dancing butterflies, there lived a poor widow and her 2 daughters. The older one, Clarissa, had shiny hair, sharp eyes, and a sharper tongue. She loved pretty things, ribbons, jewels, mirrors, but she never loved helping others. The younger one, Elena, had gentle eyes, curly brown hair, and a heart as warm as fresh bread on a winter morning. Everyone in the village adored her because she always smiled, even when life wasn't easy. Their small cottage stood beside a forest pond that shimmered like melted stars. The villagers whispered that a fairy lived inside that spring, blessing the kind and teaching lessons to the cruel. But Clarissa just rolled her eyes. Fairies? Huh! That's for children. The morning of Magic 1 sunny morning, their mother shouted from the doorway, "Elena, go fetch water from the spring, and be quick, your sister needs to wash her ribbons." Elena picked up the heavy jug with both hands. "Yes, Mother," she said softly. Clarissa just stretched and yawned. "Better hurry, little servant," she teased, twirling a lock of her perfect hair. Elena smiled instead of arguing and walked through the forest. The path sparkled with dew, and birds sang her name, or maybe it was just the wind. As she knelt by the spring, filling her jug, a soft, croaky voice came from behind the reeds. "Dear child, could you please give me a sip of water?" Elena turned and saw an old woman in rags, shaking, her gray hair tangled like roots. Her eyes were kind but tired. "Oh, of course, grandmother," said Elena. She scooped fresh water into a wooden cup and held it to the woman's lips. The old woman drank slowly, smiled, and straightened her back. Then, something sparkled. Her rags turned to silver silk. Her cane became a shining staff. Her hair glowed like moonlight. Elena gasped, You're the fairy of the spring!" The fairy chuckled, voice like a song. "Indeed, child, you've shown kindness without asking for anything in return. Such hearts are rare." She touched Elena's cheek with one glowing finger. "From this day, every word you speak will bring forth flowers and jewels, gifts of your pure heart." Before Elena could even thank her, poof! The fairy dissolved into a swirl of light and mist. A mouthful of magic! Elena hurried home, her jug sloshing with water, her heart racing faster than a squirrel's. "Mother, I'm back!" she called, and plink out fell a tiny ruby and a pink rose. Her mother's eyes nearly popped out. What was that?" I think it came from my mouth," said Elena. Another pearl dropped. "Tell me everything!" shouted her mother. So Elena told her the whole story, and with every word, diamonds, emeralds, and daisies poured out, scattering across the floor like glittering rain. Clarissa's jaw dropped. "What? She gets jewels for talking?" The mother's face turned greedy. "Clarissa, my darling," she hissed. "You must go to that spring right now. If your sister can do it, so can you." The wrong kind of words. Clarissa stomped through the forest, muttering, "I'll get more jewels than she ever did. I'll build a castle made of gold." At the spring, she saw the same old woman, bent and trembling, holding an empty cup. "Good day, child," said the woman softly. "Could you spare me some water?" Clarissa rolled her eyes. "Ugh, what do I look like, your servant? Get it yourself, old lady." The old woman sighed and shimmered again. Her rags turned to silver, her hair blazed white. Clarissa gasped, "Oh no!" The fairy's eyes glowed, calm but powerful. "You've spoken cruelly. So cruel shall your gift be. From now on, every word you speak will release toads and snakes, just as venomous as your heart." "Wait, what?" Clarissa started, but before she could finish, a fat toad jumped from her mouth and croaked, followed by a tiny snake slithering down her arm. "Ew!" She screamed and ran all the way home. The shocking return. When Clarissa burst into the cottage, her mother jumped. "Well, where are the jewels. Clarissa opened her mouth. Ribbit! A slimy frog plopped onto the table. Ah! Screamed the mother. Elena tried not to laugh. Maybe if you speak kindly. Ribbit! Another one. The mother fainted. That night, the house echoed with croaks and hisses. Clarissa hid under her blanket, crying. For the first time in her life, she felt small and sorry. Elena tiptoed to her bed and whispered, "Don't worry. The fairy only punishes to teach. Be kind, and maybe the curse will fade." Clarissa sniffled, saying nothing, though one tiny frog hopped onto her pillow and blinked kindly at her. The prince and the girl of jewels. Weeks passed, and word spread through the land about the girl who spoke in flowers and gems. One day, a young prince rode through the forest and found Elena gathering wildflowers. "Good day, young lady," he said kindly. "Are you the one they call the jewel-tongued maiden?" Elena blushed. "Oh, I suppose that's me," she said, and out fluttered a sapphire butterfly and a handful of rose petals. The prince laughed in amazement. "How extraordinary! But more wonderful still is your kindness." They spoke for hours about dreams, stars, and laughter. And though jewels still fell with her words, the prince saw something far more precious, her gentle heart. In time, he asked her to marry him, not for her beauty, but for her soul. Their wedding was held in a garden that bloomed brighter with every word Elena spoke. When she said, "I do," diamonds drifted like snowflakes, and even the frogs from the forest came to watch. One of them winked. A second chance. Clarissa, ashamed, had left the village, traveling alone. Wherever she went, people ran from her croaks and snakes. But one cold night, she found a hurt puppy by the roadside. "Oh, you poor thing," she whispered, forgetting herself. "Don't worry, I'll help you." And as she spoke, no frog, no snake, only a single pearl rolled from her lips. The fairy's voice echoed softly through the wind. "Even the hardest heart can bloom when it chooses kindness." Clarissa smiled for the first time, holding the puppy close. The village of Giggle Goats. One sunny morning, they stumbled upon the village of Giggle Goats. The goats were busy bouncing on trampolines made of clouds, juggling berries, and having tiny tea parties. The mayor goat, a very serious-looking goat with a monocle, frowned. "Who are you?" he asked, squinting at Clarissa. I'm Clarissa. I'm learning to be kind," she said shyly, holding Sprinkles. The goats blinked. Then suddenly, one goat sneezed, "Aku!" And instead of hay flying everywhere, tiny glittering stars shot out. "Wow!" Clarissa exclaimed. "That's exactly what I mean. Words and actions can make magic." The goats cheered. And before she knew it, Clarissa was juggling berries with the funniest goat in town. They're a goat named Sir Bouncy McFluff. Sprinkles chased after berries like a tiny tornado. Clarissa laughed so hard she almost cried. The mischievous moonberries. A week later, Clarissa found a forest full of moonberries, tiny glowing fruits that floated in mid-air like little lanterns. But the moonberries were mischievous. If you didn't speak kindly, they would squirt sticky glitter juice all over you. Clarissa approached carefully. "Hello, moonberries. Would you like some company?" she said politely. Pop! A berry bounced on her nose. Pop! Another landed on Sprinkle's tail, but instead of sticky juice, the berries laughed and giggled, releasing sparkling lights that floated all around. Clarissa giggled too. "I think I'm getting the hang of this kindness thing." By the end of the day, she had collected a basket full of glowing moonberries, which she shared with hungry forest creatures. Even the grumpiest hedgehogs smiled and did tiny cartwheels. Meanwhile, Elena had been thinking about her sister. She decided to pay a secret visit, sneaking through the magical forests. When she arrived, she saw Clarissa dancing with Sprinkles, juggling moonberries while goats and birds cheered. Clarissa squealed, hugging her sister tightly. Elena laughed and held out her hands. As soon as she touched a floating berry, it burst into tiny stars, twirling in midair and landing softly on their heads. Together, the sisters danced and laughed, their voices creating streams of sparkling lights, the forest lighting up like a candy-colored disco. The tiny dragon rescue. Suddenly, a tiny dragon. It was no bigger than Sprinkles, but had scales that shimmered like rainbows. Its wings were tangled in vines, and it looked very worried. "Oh no, poor little dragon," Clarissa said. Carefully, she untangled the vines. "There you go, little one free." The dragon blinked its big, glittery eyes. Then boom! A small cloud of rainbow sparks puffed out. The dragon started bouncing in joy, accidentally flicking sparks everywhere, which tickled the goats, the hedgehogs, and even Sprinkles. Oops! Sorry! Magic in every step. From that day on, Clarissa realized something. Kindness was fun. Every gentle word or helpful action became a little burst of magic. Together, Clarissa, Elena, Sprinkles, and even their new dragon friend went on endless little adventures. Teaching a grumpy owl to laugh, painting the clouds with rainbow colors, holding berry-picking contests with goats, losers got glitter showers. Saving a baby hedgehog stuck in a marshmallow bush. And every night, when the stars came out, the sisters would sit together, whispering kind wishes into the sky, and tiny diamonds and flowers would drift down, sprinkling like magic snowflakes over their cozy little village. The moral grows. Clarissa discovered that being kind didn't just bring pearls, jewels, or sparkling lights. It brought laughter, friendship, and adventure, the kind that made your heart feel like it was dancing. Even Sprinkles learned a trick. Whenever Clarissa said a kind word, he would spin in a happy tornado, leaving a trail of tiny rainbow sparks. And as the fairy's voice whispered through the forest, the girls knew a heart that chooses kindness can turn even the silliest, stickiest, bounciest adventure into true magic. The mysterious, sparkling forest. After the tiny dragon flapped happily into the sky, the sisters heard a strange whispering sound coming from deeper in the forest. "Elena, do you hear that?" Clarissa asked, holding Sprinkles close. "I do," Elena said, her eyes wide with excitement. "It sounds like giggling leaves?" Sure enough, as they walked closer, the trees began shaking and bouncing. Leaves fell like confetti, and tiny glowing fairies peeked out, giggling and pointing at the sisters. Suddenly, the ground rumbled, but not in a scary way. Instead, small, round forest creatures called bumblebobs popped out from behind mushrooms. They looked like bouncing balls covered in fur, with googly eyes and tiny arms waving wildly. "Hello, hello!" the bumblebobs squeaked in unison. "We need help! The glitterberry bush is trapped under the mischief rock!" Clarissa gasped. "Oh no! The berries! They're what all the forest creatures eat to sparkle and dance!" Elena nodded. "We have to save them. Right, Sprinkles?" The puppy barked enthusiastically, leaving a trail of tiny rainbow paw prints. The Mischief Rock Challenge. The sisters ran to the glitterberry bush and saw a huge shimmering rock glowing mischievously. It looked alive, it twitched, bounced, and wobbled as if it had a mind of its own. "Oh, wow! It's kind of dancing," Clarissa whispered. "It's tricky, that's for sure," Elena giggled. "We need a plan." Clarissa had an idea. "Sprinkles! Distract the rock!" She tossed a glowing moonberry near it. The rock jumped toward the berry, rolling slightly. The bumblebobs squealed with joy, bouncing higher than ever. Elena pulled a vine from a nearby tree, twisting it like a rope, while Clarissa pushed gently. Together, with Sprinkles bouncing and barking, they rolled the mischief rock just enough to free the glitterberry bush. Poof! Glittering berries tumbled out, bouncing like tiny balloons. The forest lit up in sparkling pinks, blues, and purples. The bumblebobs cheered. "You did it! You saved the sparkle!" A strange map appears. As the sisters celebrated, one tiny bumblebob floated toward Clarissa with a glowing scroll. "This appeared after the glitterberries were freed," it squeaked. Clarissa unrolled the scroll. It was a sparkling treasure map. The map showed a winding river of candy-colored water, a laughing waterfall with rainbow foam, and a mysterious castle in the clouds labeled the Laughing Fairy's Castle. Elena clapped her hands. "Wow, do you think it's real?" Clarissa grinned. "Only one way to find out adventure time," Sprinkles barked, jumping high enough to catch a falling rainbow spark. The Candy River Adventure. The next morning, the sisters, Sprinkles, and the tiny dragon, who had returned to accompany them, followed the map to the Candy River. The water sparkled like sugar crystals, and little gummy fish jumped in rhythm to a bubbly tune. "Careful," said Elena. "The fish like to nibble at shoelaces." Clarissa laughed as a gummy fish tried to take her boot. "Hey, watch my shoes, little guy." Sprinkles chased after it, bouncing across candy rocks. Suddenly, a group of mischievous chocolate frogs jumped out. They croaked funny little riddles. "To cross us, tell a joke. Make us giggle or jump back in the chocolate bog." Clarissa thought fast. Why did the moonberry refuse to fight? Because it didn't want to be crushed. The chocolate frogs exploded in giggles, bouncing aside, and the path cleared. Elena clapped. "That was amazing! You're a natural, Clarissa!" The sisters and their companions safely crossed the river, leaving a trail of sparkling footprints behind. The castle in the clouds! Finally, after a day full of giggling bridges, jumping rainbow stones, and Sprinkles chasing flying sparks, they reached the foot of a towering staircase that led up into the clouds. "Wow," Clarissa whispered. "This must be the Laughing Fairy's castle." Elena nodded. "Look! The clouds are shaped like balloons and swirly candy." A gigantic door with smiling eyes opened as they approached. A booming yet cheerful voice greeted them. "Welcome, brave sisters! Only those with kind hearts and adventurous spirits may enter." Clarissa felt her chest swell with excitement and pride. "We're ready!" The door swung open, revealing a grand hall filled with sparkling laughter, magical creatures bouncing around, and shelves stacked with glowing storybooks, giggling toys, and jars of floating rainbow dust. The sisters knew immediately. This was the start of an even bigger adventure, where every kind word, brave choice, and funny moment would create magic beyond imagination.